Cool. Let's get this started. Um, where's everybody calling in from? What states are we dialing in from? Nice. Got New Jersey, same here. From North Jersey, Amanda. Where are you from? We have Texas, France. Wow, that's awesome. Central, nice. London. Wow, Saksham. I actually studied in London. I was there for 3 years. Got my bachelor there. It's my favorite city. Philippines, nice. Great to meet you all. Florida, Texas, Chicago. I was just in Chicago 2 days ago. First time actually. Wow, I got people from everywhere. And what brands are here? You can start name dropping your brands. I want to see who's here. Nice. Brook and Bloom Jewelry Company, Fast Growing Trees, Curve, Vital Hava, Raw Generation.
Guys.
Let's go.
What's going on, Ben? How are you?
Good, good. Happy to be here.
Always happy to be here. Incredible. Thanks for kicking things off already. Wow, we have a lot of people in the chat. This is awesome. Great brands too. Um, Amazing. While we're waiting, do we want to at least start to um kick off with some intros? Ben, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Ben. I'm the VP Payments and Risk at Chargeflow. I've spent the last decade or so in the chargeback space, helping both fintechs, issuers, and acquirers to sort of like understand where the money leak happens, right, and how to stop it. Um, since I worked both for issuers and acquirers in the past, I saw the two, faces of the same coin, and it's amazing to see how chargebacks and refund abuse and everything is together connected to customer experience. To be honest, and I think this is something we're going to cover quite extensively here.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, Ravi, you want to go next?
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. My name is Ravi, VP of Finance and Operations at Obvi. Obvi, those of you who don't know, we're an e-commerce brand. We specialize in health and wellness, beauty supplements, and collagen proteins pretty much in every single product we have. Been here for about 4 years, and a very lean team, so everything kind of under financial operations, rolls up to me.
And for those of you who I have not met, my name is Ron Shah. I am the co-founder and CEO of Obvi. Again, as Roy said, we've been building this e-commerce brand focused on health and wellness for last 6 years. And I think, one of the reasons we do a lot of these things besides our podcast or newsletter is to share, in a quick 30 to 45 minutes, if we can come and share a few things that are helping us and we can congregate, a lot of brands to come and chat with us and talk to us about obviously the topics that we're here to discuss, but also any other questions you have. Like, we want to use this chat and we want to use this day to be very interactive. Ask questions. It doesn't have to only be about, chargebacks and stuff, but that is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about refund abuse. We're going to talk about chargebacks, burnout. And I think what we can do to fight back, I think, especially as you go into Q4, one of the biggest things you see is a lot of people spend a lot of money and then they realize they didn't have the money to spend and then they go and make the brands try to pay for it. So we want to talk about that, get ahead of that, especially if you're a smaller brand going through your first couple of Black Friday, Cyber Mondays coming up. So we're going to get into a lot of that. And again, we want this to be interactive. Tell us what brand you're with. Tell us where you're from. Ask us questions. And we'll jump in and keep it very conversative from there. So I think one of the first pieces that we should jump into, Ben, both you and I think, while Ravi and Ben are talking, I'll drop off the camera so you guys can focus and then vice versa. But what we can do here is, Ben, I think it'd be really good to maybe just chat through what is the true ways to understand what is the cost of a bad customer, right? I think we all talk about new customer acquisition costs. We always talk about like, acquiring customers, this and that. My question here is, and why Chargeflow even ceases to exist today is you guys figured out that there is a cost of bad customers, and it's a lot. Let's dive in there.
All right, so definitely I'm gonna start with something which might be out of the gate here, but not every customer is worth having, to be honest, right? As you mentioned, bad customers drain support capacity, they demoralize teams, right? They inflate chargeback ratios. You've got repeated offenders that cause refund losses, shipping costs, operational costs, dispute fees, and essentially they exceed the lifetime value of the customers, right? The fear of one-star reviews, something that I assume all merchants have. And just, the idea of having a good customer experience is something which is super relevant for this specifically. And the idea is you have some sort of patterns to be able to recognize these customers and eventually try to mitigate the risk that coming from them.
And I'm curious in terms of where this kind of starts and at what kind of place we can start to identify these patterns. Is there somewhere that brands can get ahead in knowing, like, hey, if you're going to run affiliate traffic, you're probably going to get customers like this quality. Any other like call outs here that you believe are important for brands to know?
To start off, I think that especially when brands start, they aim to a certain market, right? And just out the bat, you have different cultural experiences when you talk about US and Europe, for example, different cultures, different way to manage expectations. So essentially, I can give you just an anecdote, right? When I worked for a bank, I had a chargeback from a customer that went to a restaurant and ordered a plate of shrimps, right? And the menu said 6 shrimps. She had 5. She ate the whole plate and then she charged back the whole thing, right? So this is kind of a mentality of, you know what, I'm gonna get what I ordered, what I paid for, but I'm gonna still file a chargeback just to get the money back as well because I wasn't happy or wasn't satisfied. So this is just one anecdote that I've seen in the past. It was sort of funny, right? I mean, funny to look at, but not funny for the business that lost the money automatically. So generally speaking, you've got your genuine customers, right? That sometimes have issues. If it's an order issue, if it's something with delivery, if something wrong with the actual product or the service, all good. But on the other hand, you have customers that just understand that this could be abused, right? You can get both the service and the product and then file a chargeback and you get the money. And mainly issuers made it so easy nowadays. Back in the days, you had to download the PDF, fill it by hand, and then send it back to the bank. But now you can just open your bank app, right? And just click on transaction and dispute. That's it. So it's just super easy. And you mentioned Black Friday. Sorry, you want to say something?
No, very helpful.
So you mentioned, the Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and you've got Christmas, and people are actually spending money, right? And then they look at their account and see, okay, now I'm in trouble. So what's the easiest thing to do? Just try to charge it back. And most of the time it works, especially because a lot of merchants look at it as this is the cost of doing business. And I'm here to disagree, to be honest.
I love that. And I think one of the things you kind of talked through was just I think it's great to identify these people early, but I think the other piece is like if you can't identify them early or you can't change your marketing, what are those tools? And what we created. And I think we're gonna dive into that a little bit later. I want to just address one question, Kat. Thanks for asking. I've always wondered what banks see on their end. This would help me respond to chargebacks better and provide more specific information. What do they look for, if anything? Ben, I feel like you know exactly how to tackle this one. It's a great question too.
It is. And honestly, there's no good answer. When I worked for the bank, it was in Germany, N26, and we essentially went word by word as the card schemes defined. And we had special training for MasterCard and so on. And the team was really informed about how to do chargebacks the proper way. But not all issuers do the same, right? You've got issuers that just outsource the whole chargeback operations out of their internal systems, and then there's no really consistent way to know what issuers are actually looking for. The main idea, right, is to address the dispute, the underlying reason of the dispute. But this is also an issue because a lot of PSPs, when they provide you with data, you get some sort of a dumbed down version of what the actual reason was. And especially when, as an issuer, when you file a chargeback, you have to also file some sort of an issue letter in which you provide written explanation of what's the actual reason. And sometimes it gets lost in the system. Not all PSPs provided to merchants, but I know for a fact that, for example, Stripe provided, you can access it through the portal and see the actual underlying reasons. And sometimes it doesn't even match the reason that was categorized by the PSP. So this is something to look for.
It's crazy. Very helpful. Thank you for that, Ben. Sarah, and I'm loving all the questions that are coming in. So before we move on to the next segment, I want to just get these questions answered. Sarah said, do banks take into consideration when a customer has multiple chargebacks, meaning they will be more willing to favor on the side of the company instead of the customer? Great question, Sarah.
Definitely. And here again, I had some sort of a matrix, right? I said, you know what, a new merchant, right, is in the system for 6 months. You've got one chargeback. Now he's filing another chargeback within 6 months. And this is a question for the audience. How many chargebacks have you filed in your lifetime? Probably not too much. Barely you can count them on both hands, right? So whenever I received a chargeback, the first thing I did is I looked at the customer. Who is the customer? How long has he been with the bank? How many transactions have they made? Did they purchase with the same merchant in the past? Yes or no, or similar merchants? Just to get a clear understanding of this. Is this a real claim, or is this something here that's sort of like smelling like an abuse? So best practice would be to look at the customer first, and issuers essentially they need to have the customer try to resolve the claim with the merchant directly before filing a chargeback, and not all issuers insist on that. So best practice, yes, but generally speaking, realistically, it's harder to define.
Very helpful. Dahlia had a great question. One of the things I saw more of last year was customers who buy 3 to 4 items, then claim they only got one. Thanks for bringing this up, Dahlia. Happened to us way too much last Black Friday, especially because we had buy 4, get 3 free gifts type of things. We purchase our labels by weight, so I know the item shipped, but the bank sides with them and refunds the whole order. Ben, what's the protection here? Because I'm very curious about this too.
I mean, there's no one tool that beats them all, right? But essentially, you have to take measures in terms of your policy, especially on the refund policy and return policy. You need to make sure that whenever you provide the refund or the provisional credit, you are sure to be getting the actual products, all of them. If it's full, then it's going to be the full products, and only then send out the policy. And talking about policies, generally speaking, it has to be very clear and very definitive, but also accessible. So your customer support should be accessible. You should have not only call us in a certain number and that's it. So it has to be on both ends. Or both ends need to be addressed and adapted.
Love it. Dustin had a great question too. My company ships perishable seafood across the US. We heavily rely on FedEx and UPS to meet their shipping deadlines to prevent spoilage. When they miss the shipping deadline, customers will always charge back. Even if we process the order on time on their end, we get crushed on these chargebacks and never win. Yeah. Any suggestions, Ben, here?
That's a fair question. That's a good question. So essentially, the liability is the issue here, right? Because who's to blame, right? Is it you that you've sent the product on time, or is it the shipping company that failed to deliver on time? I'd say that this is something that should be addressed in the policies. In cases in which there are delays, it should be addressed on who is exactly is the one that takes the liability. And if ever a chargeback comes in, then it needs to be clear in the policies that you can use then in your presentment. So you can show to the bank, you know what, we've sent it on time, we've got logs, we see everything on the shipping company, but then the delay happened not on our end, therefore we cannot assume liability, and it's in the policies which the customer signed before they made the purchase.
Super helpful. Colina, guys, loving the questions. I mean, this is literally what we wanted to be here for. So thank you, guys. If the merchant provides all supporting documents and still loses a chargeback, what's their recourse?
There are two main options. One of them is to go to pre-arbitration, but that's, as we all know, that's quite costly, especially if you lose, because the losing side would not only pay the transaction amount, but also the losing side would pay 500 to 600 euros if they lose, plus 100 euros for every violation during the. So it's possible to go to pre-arb, maybe for higher amounts, but definitely not for lower ones. The other option, if it's really outside of the card guidelines, then you have the option to do a pre-compliance. And this is some sort of a different escalation that you can do against the issuer. I've done it in the past. It's very rare, but yeah, that's about it.
Amazing, super helpful. I think where we can use this topic to mold into is, and Ravi, I'll bring you in here for this, is I think building a policy framework here is super important. And I think you started touching on it, Ben, with some of the questions we had already. Let's dive into this, right? Like how to set the clear boundaries in CX policies. What are some of the internal playbooks of when to escalate or blacklist a customer? How do we maybe set up automation to flag bad actors before they become customers? Let's chat through this, and then we'll jump back into some of the questions. And Ravi, if you want to give your experience from the OpBee lens first, go for it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when we had to rewrite our like refund return policies to give our customer service team like a little bit of clarity on like now they know, okay, when to issue a refund, when to escalate this, when to flag accounts, and like determine when customers are just a bad apple, right? And that's like another thing, right? Like just the abuse that customer service reps do get that can snowball into like a bigger issue because they're more or less like the emotional front line of your brand, right? So if they're burning out from abuse, that's going to show up in your churn metrics. They're not going to be able to recapture lost revenue. And we even gave them like explicit permission to cut off abusive customers, which is like not only going to save them time and boost their morale, but that's going to improve like your overall CSAT, right? So it's not even just about like an HR policy, it's just good business. Having happier reps will resolve issues faster and recover that lost revenue better. So that was kind of like at least our experience on ObVie's end.
Ben, anything to add there, or
yeah,
how you? Yeah.
Definitely. So first thing to say is policies are protection. They're not punishment, right? Policies is something that protects a brand from abusive behavior. So as you mentioned, definitely empowering the customer support agent to be able to, set their boundaries, right? To not get abused. You can apply, the 3-strike rule for abusive conversations. You can provide some sort of like a de-escalation scenarios and train the agents, how to try to de-escalate the situation. Provide some sort of a post-incident debriefs for managers. But essentially nowadays, when we have AI all over the place, it's quite easy to just throw all of your policies into the AI, right? And ask them, how might a customer not abuse, but just misunderstand the policies, right? And you're going to be amazed on what the AI would find. Obviously, you should go through the response, right? But essentially, you're going to find some things that you did not think of when you wrote the policies. So that's a good practice to try.
I think that's such a great tip. Just literally not always just ask ChatGPT what to do, but also tell it to like review what you've done. Right? Instead of just assuming what you created 3 years ago for your brand is still relevant and understood by others.
Exactly. A lot of times it's just misunderstanding of the policy. If 100%. They actually read the policy, right? People only read the policy when they have to get a refund.
Absolutely. And then I think one other piece in this, if you guys can maybe just bring this up, is in terms of what you're seeing, either brands or what we've done on the Obvi end, right, is from being able to take policies that are out there, are there any more explicit ways to put it in front of customers? Like, have you seen people do emails around it? Have you seen people, maybe move it up rather than just keeping in the footer? And again, maybe there isn't, but are there ways to where you need to be more explicit in so that people see it? Because a lot of times, and I think we've seen it a lot on Obvi, is a lot of people say, I never saw this. Oh, I didn't even know that was there, right? Or, and of course you can't just let them run away with that, but just curious if any other additional thoughts there.
Yeah, definitely. So, especially around subscriptions, right? It's so common that people charge back a renewal payment because they fail to understand it's a subscription. Now, both the card schemes, both Visa and MasterCard, have very definitive, essentially, rules in regard to how to provide the policies surrounding the subscription. Now, first thing I would say is, obviously, you need to make sure that it's in your checkout. They know it's a subscription, they know it's a renewal, they know it's a free trial, but it's going to be charged afterwards. And they have to see it, big letters on the first screen, and then sending reminder emails before a renewal takes place. This is something that you can also use as a proof when you provide a presentment letter. So this is something that should be done. Now, card schemes usually requires you to either have the link to the TNCs in the last page in which you click pay now, or if you want to do it in elsewhere during the checkout session, it has to be a tick box. So it has to be some sort of an active operation on the customer's end. So I'd say those are the two things that I think are really important to see.
Very, very helpful. I think one thing, and then we'll wrap up and on to the next topic, is identification of problem customers. We touched on a little bit in the beginning. I think from a brand side, Ravi, anything you want to call out that's been particularly helpful for you to do to make sure that anyone who's being malicious about this, get rid of them versus the people who are more one-off. Any other comments to add there before we move into dealing with abuse and support?
Yeah, I mean, it's rare when Chargeflow can already automatically handle those kind of situations, but like when a one-off comes in, I tend to just team up with the customer service department because they have a better pulse on this kind of customer's history with us, right? And maybe they do have a valid reason for the chargeback, and it's nice to always get that qualitative lens, where it's not just like we kind of look at things like data and binary and black and white. So I think that's like, having the customer service team really hands-on with this alongside the finance team is super helpful.
Absolutely. Caitlin just asked, wondering what your thoughts are on platforms like Chargeflow that claim to help prevent chargebacks. Are they effective? Ben, maybe you have some bias here, but I'll let you answer this one.
Right. So there are several tools out there that are about chargebacks. Now, preventing chargebacks is not the same as responding to chargebacks, right? Those are two separate things. Now, preventing chargebacks you can do in three main ways. One of them is basically prepayment, right? You've got various fraud tools that essentially block certain payments from taking place. So this is one option. The other option is post-payment, but pre-fulfillment, especially for customers that actually ship out goods, for example. There's a way, and we can touch base on this afterwards, to sort of like get a notion of, is this transaction that I just approved risky or not? Should I require additional verification? Should I decline it? Or is it safe to pass it on? And the last post-payment is essentially alerts. Verify, Etoka, TC40, CDRM, all of these are essentially mitigation or preventing chargeback from happening in the first place.
Yeah,
Caitlin, I think from our experience too, go ahead, Ravi. I think from brand experience, you want to give your feedback.
Yeah, I mean, just to comment on that too, it's like at least before, I mean, a lot of early stage startups might even be at fault at this too, but like you look at these chargebacks and refunds as a cost of doing business. And then until you actually get a solution in place, because for a lean team, it might not make sense to have certain people spend, time out of their day when they could be focusing on higher priorities, right? And it's one like exercise that like I like to do, just kind of like, food for thought. when you have like, let's say, can kind of use round numbers, but like, let's say even like $1 million a month business, and between your chargebacks and refunds, let's say you're working at like a 2 to 3% rate there, that might be looked at as the cost of doing business, but and it might not make a difference to do a million revenue versus a million and 20,000. But when you're able to recapture, let's say 20K out of that, 25 to 30K there, that is all revenue that's already been expensed out. You already shipped the cost of goods. You already paid for the shipping. You already paid the payment processing fees and everything that goes in it. So there's no additional variable cost there. And so even though a 2% change in revenue isn't significant, when you're at like, let's say, average 8% kind of net income P&L, you're making 80K on a million, but now that 20K is dropping down and your profits increasing by 25% from 80K to 100K. And I think that is like, to your point, Caitlin, is it effective? It's you have to look at it as kind of like in that sense. At least that's what made it really click for me, where it's like, okay, what is 1 to 2% on your revenue? But it's like, oh, that's 20% on your EBITDA. That's pretty significant. So I just wanted to chime in there with 2 cents there.
No, definitely. And just to add up, essentially, when you get a chargeback, you lose 3 times, right? You lose the product, you lose the fees that you pay on chargebacks. Some PSPs also, will give you a fee if you essentially answer to a chargeback but lose, and then also you lose, the transaction itself, right? So
Yeah.
it's a triple loss.
And honestly, like, in this day and age with e-commerce brands relatively running on slim margins, slim contribution margins, like one bad customer can cost you dozens of profitable customers. So I think that's really the right way to look at it.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I saw a case from a merchant that did not really look at their chargebacks too often. And we just identify someone using the same email, same card, same account, doing chargebacks month over month over month, but still continuing to purchase. But nobody blocked them because nobody had a look at this. So there's essentially a customer that is for 6 months buying stuff, but then charging all of it afterwards.
I think one of the other pieces that I'd love to jump into now is, when it comes to if the fault, sorry, there's a couple of questions. Let me just make sure I get to it. If the fault is on the company side, is it fine to ask the customer to close the chargeback so we can issue the refund and avoid a dispute fee? Francis just asked this question.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, if you get along with the customer and tell them essentially cancel the charge, we're going to give you the refund, then I'm pretty sure that you're going to get back the fee for the charge because it's basically canceled. I think it's, well, to be honest, it depends on the PSP, right? It depends on the negotiation that you do, because some merchants might pay the full fee, some merchants get to some sort of an agreement in which they pay half of the fee, and some merchants manage to remove the fee entirely. So it really comes to the personal agreement.
Dahlia just asked, what's the best way to block people on Shopify? It doesn't seem to have an easy way to do it. Is this where they just use Chargeflow, Ben?
That's one option. Well, it really depends on your systems, but we do offer some sort of a blacklist or a prevention list for repeated abusers. Essentially, it's easy when it's the same email and same name and same mobile number, something that you can really identify. So you can just block it on your end. But when it becomes a bit more technically challenging to find them, when they open different accounts and different names, then you're going to have some sort of a tool that uses a cohort of information that identify and sort of like create an actor based on who this person is and who's behind the transaction.
Amazing. Awesome. All the questions are caught up. I want to jump into just a little bit around, I think fraud prevention and detection, but also just, I think, managing some of these chargebacks, right? I think you have like credit card fraud versus friendly fraud, how to detect both, how to win some of these disputes, but also like, maybe work with a tool like Chargeflow to not have to, actually put time towards this, because it is important. But I do want to touch on some of these points. Ben, lead us with a little bit of discussion around here, right? What are some of the things we should be focusing on when it comes to just pure play reducing chargebacks beyond what we've covered so far?
Right. I mean, so reducing chargebacks is either you use external tools or you sort of like enhance your internal tools. So external tools we touch base, right? It's going to be the alerts. It's going to be some sort of fraud prevention, and internal tools is just how you have your policies set up, how you engage with customers. If you are proactively reaching out to customers and asking them for their ideas or their reviews, just getting active and supportive for the customers. And to be honest, we've seen in the past that merchants, their services were bad, right? If the product or the service is of a lower quality, then obviously it's going to generate more chargebacks. So those are the things to keep in mind when we're talking about reducing chargebacks. If we're talking about alerts, right, it could span between 50% to 80% of reducing chargebacks, but this comes at the price of actually refunding all of these pre-dispute issues. So it's also something to keep in mind.
Incredible feedback. Travis here said the trick is to cancel them before you capture their payment, so it's a void and not a refund, which is a great call out.
Definitely. If you manage to identify these hazardous or riskiest transaction before you actually settle them, then that's the best option. But a lot of the merchants we've met have an issue with conversion, essentially, right? Because you cannot really guarantee that you only block bad customers. You also block genuine customers.
You really do, and I think you have to be careful of that piece, right? You can't have this like one-stop catch-all type of process, which can impact other things, right? Okay, I want to touch on a few things before we open it up for Q&A, right? Which is like there is this inherent element going on where people feel like they can treat the support staff like absolute with zero care, right? It's like you see like there have been like derogatory terms called to like our support staff, and it does fall under abuse, right? It's like you feel like your team, and sometimes you as founders or operators are reading this stuff too, and you're like, damn, that like hurt me, like that was rough. I think any good feedback here, anyone, and I'd love, there's over 60 of you sticking around watching this. Obviously it's an important topic enough for all of us to chat through this. What have you guys done that's kept your support team above edge here, right? And we'll talk through a couple of things we've done at Obvi. But Ben, any lead off moments here on any tips on how to make sure a support team doesn't fall privy to this abuse?
Yeah, well, this is a very tough topic, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the customer support is the front line of the company. It represents the company, and if they get abused, it's a bad thing for everyone. I think training in not just de-escalation, but also how to handle emotionally bad or abusive language. This is something which is very important. Having some sort of an internal process to essentially escalate the case to a manager, which is more experienced perhaps, is something that could be applied, and just be supportive of the sport. It's really tough to be on the front line, and I think that if they see that the company itself, the brand itself, is giving providing them with support, this is something which gets like a boost of morale, which is very important.
Yeah, and I can even touch on like just some of the stuff we saw on Obvi. Like obviously the policies are important, and having like a cutoff threshold where your team knows it's okay to just stop entertaining a bad customer like that. But one thing that's like funny and kind of something that's worked with us is like we sometimes make fun of these instances, right? They are so ridiculous. Like one of our customer service reps got called a fat cow, and so we made a TikTok and put her in a inflatable cow costume, and we kind of had a joke about it, right? And then one of the guys said like, why is everybody at Obvi so unhealthy? And it's just like, oh wow, we're all just taking now these like collateral shots here, and it's just like we kind of that helps morale as well, just kind of being able like to laugh at these things and just have them handle it in a more positive way, because kind of being berated like this constantly, it can have a mental toll and kind of a confidence shot too. So I think that's just one tip, just maybe have a little bit more fun with it and try to have them kind of handle it in a more positive way.
We have some incredible feedback coming in. Kat said people are so rude. I totally agree with you. And these abusive emails, yeah, they're tough. Travis said returns go through a separate portal which handles a lot of the contacts. Chatbot also helps to see how they talk to the bot before a human, which is amazing. That's really good, kind of filtered layer. And then you just cancel their order and block them if they're just abusive, no exceptions. Amazing feedback, Travis. I totally love that policy and rule you've set in. Colina said, I tell our agents to allow the customers to vent a bit and to remember that the anger is not directed towards them. Great. More power to you, Colina, and your team. And then Jackie said, we escalate up and then the management team advises we will not tolerate that behavior towards our teammates and we can resolve this together, or we will have to part ways and typically just refund and be done with the customer. And we do not want customers like that, which is awesome. All great ways to handle the situation. Just shows how much the merchant has to kind of carry forward some of that pain. And then Kat had a question, which AI customer tools are people using to vet customers before they get escalated? Any thoughts there, Ben, or anyone in the chat?
That's a good question. Ravi, I'll let you take the first here.
I'm actually curious myself if anybody in the chat has some good suggestions.
Yeah, we haven't been able to be privileged with using a tool in that place. So Kat, let's look out for the chat on that. Okay, as we're wrapping up here and coming into the last 8-10 minutes, I think, Ben, I just want to kind of talk through a kind of picture yourself moment, right? When it comes to Chargeflow and dealing with some of this stuff, let's picture who this brand is, who this operator is, right? This is a brand that's doing, really any sort of revenue. Would you agree with that, or is there maybe a certain threshold? And is there a certain category, or is it agnostic to category? Let's kind of paint the picture of who should be exploring this.
I'd say that everyone, to be honest, anyone that uses cards in order to sell their goods and services, because at the end of the day, Chargeback does not care really if you're a big brand or a small brand, if you're digital goods or physical goods. If you use cards, then people are gonna use the card system that was originally, back in the 1970s, designed in order to protect customers. They're gonna use it, right? And unless you are prepared to at least understand what it means to use cards, regardless of what type of merchants you are, you're gonna get chargebacks. I mean, everybody gets chargebacks. It's not. I mean, it's not only certain brands that are doing really bad at payments. It's everyone. If you allow cards, you're gonna get chargebacks. So it's not a particular brand or an industry. We have merchants from all industries. If it's luxury, if it's digital goods, SaaS companies, freight companies, airlines, hospitality, you name it. I mean, at the end of the day, the card scheme guidelines are about chargebacks in general. They care less about the industry. You have some sort of a definition of certain compelling evidence that you can provide per type of industry or per type of product that you sell. But the main rules are for all companies.
Very helpful. Ravi, any closing thoughts on your end on what brands should be thinking about and who should be considering this?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think pretty much it becomes brand and size agnostic. Anybody that is kind of doing any level of material sales, you are going to start seeing chargebacks. And especially you start to see this when you start to onboard a lot of payment processors, right? Because the manual process to managing chargebacks, you have to go into each portal. You have to manually dispute each one, provide the tracking info, provide the latest updates. And the reality is, like, when you are a lean brand scaling, this is not something that's top of mind. So why not implement a solution that automates 80% of this for you, where you don't have to spend your time doing it. You're not going to do it as good of a quality as these guys are doing it. It's literally just leaving money on the table. So I think it's, if you have an e-commerce brand, you're pretty much eligible for this kind of thing.
But definitely, just to add up on what you just mentioned, essentially doing chargebacks is not the main business, right? It's a byproduct of doing business, which you should not, you should handle it. But it's not you don't have to be a professional about chargebacks. Like when you are sick, you got to go to the doctor. You're not going to heal yourself, right? So if you have a chargeback issue, you should find some sort of a solution that's the main business of how to handle charge, right? How to be on top of the information that's out there that changes every now and then with the card schemes. And especially you touched base on this, especially when you work with different PSPs. And now if you have 5, 6 different PSPs, then you have to manage each one of them differently. Each one of them take a different type of file, a different type of format. Some of them would like you to have send the emails, some of them API, webhooks, whatever. It's gonna be operationally exhausting, to be honest, to try to manage all of it. So what we do is we try to minimize the operational work and sort of like provide a hands-free solution for merchants. And I think this is something that, especially if you just need to get off your chest, right? Just need to get someone that deals with it on a daily basis to provide the best possibility for you to win a chargeback. Yeah.
Amazing. Ben, I think I'm going to send some closing thoughts, guys. Please ask any other questions here. But Ben, in the meanwhile, do you want to drop a link to Chargeflow for a few people who may be interested in the chat, please? But
Yeah.
I think what I would say from my end, right, being being on the Obvi end, being somebody who gets to talk to a lot of brands from the podcast, and we have over 70,000 people who've joined our newsletter that are always emailing us and sharing their thoughts. I think the one thing that I will say is it's the little things, if you don't create a processes for when you're smaller or growing, becomes really painful when you're grown. And I think it's really hard to justify what numbers and whatnot. But I think if it's something that is on top of your mind, and again, 60 plus of you literally just listen to us talk about one element of a business P&L, right? Which is your chargeback and refund, right? That means it's affecting all of us, right? We're here setting out talking about this topic because it's impacting people. It is considerable amount of revenue, and it only grows more as you continue to grow, and that impact grows. So all I ask is at the very least, go and identify what your savings could be if you didn't have to deal with this manually and you didn't have to deal with, oh, I hope it doesn't happen, right? And I think we were very kind of oh, I'm not going to get a tool to handle this one little thing that happens sometimes. And I think until we understood the magnitude of what it's causing across our brand, that's where it became holy shit, we need to go and take a charge here. And Chargeflow, you guys have been a great partner. The goal of this was never to be hey guys, come on this webinar to go and use Chargeflow, but I think it's more about come on this webinar to understand what are we all dealing with. I love the comments and questions shared in the chat because it shows we're all dealing with it. And then are there tools out there that can help us? Yes, there is, and we've been privileged and lucky enough to work with one. And again, Ben's going to share the link here. But guys, ask questions. We're here to stick around. But point was, to really be able to talk to you guys, and we'll send out the recording. We're around if you have questions. I'll drop my email too, and Ravi's email if you guys have more questions to follow up here. But other than that, Ben, Ravi, any closing thoughts here?
Yeah, maybe if I may, I just want to talk about something that happened quite recently. The VAMP went into the enforcement period. So there was a big confusion about the VAMP. It changed many times over the past year or so. But essentially what happens is that the ratios for chargebacks, the Visa ratio for chargebacks for acquirers went down significantly, whereas the ratios for merchants went up to 1.5%. So merchants tend to now say, you know what, I'm never gonna get there. It's like 1,000 chargebacks, 1.5%. I'm not even close. The reality is, and we see it, the reality is that due to the fact that the acquire ratios 0.3%, then it means that any merchant which is above 0.3% is negatively impacting the PSP's ratio, which means that unofficially the PSP might, hold your payments, payouts, close your account. You did not reach the ratio as a merchant, but you did hurt the overall risk portfolio of the PSP, and this is something to keep look for. So that's just one other thing, and the link I've shared, it's one of our newest tools. It is a post-payment pre-fulfillment tool, and the idea is that we've built an internal logic and a model that is able to identify, based on many, many different signals, bad actors, right? Anything that might result in a bad activity, if it's a refund, if it's a chargeback, if it's a bad review, anything which is risky for the merchant, this tool is able to identify it and some sort of provide you like a logic of why it identified, why it got a high risk score, and then also provide you with a way to essentially cancel the order before you ship out the goods or before you provide access to certain online tools. So I think this is something that might be interesting for many merchants. Yeah, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Amazing. Incredible. Well, first of all, thank you all for joining. Thank you all for sticking around. You know where to find Ben, myself, Ravi. Check out Chargeflow if you're dealing with something, but also if you have just questions you want to talk through, I'm always available to get on a call and talk it through. But thank you all for joining. And this was an incredible time. Ben, thank you so much for your time. Sorry, my video has just been saying video background is developing, so I don't know what's going on. But thank you all for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.